सर्वार्थानामुपक्रमे यं नत्वा कृतकृत्याः स्युः तं नमामि गजाननम्। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। योगिनं विश्वनाथाख्यम् अस्मत्तातस्वरूपिणम् आत्मलाभात् परं लाभं वक्तारं न कदाचन। गीतार्थग्रन्थकर्तारं श्रीगुरुं प्रणमाम्यहम्। योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मे वाचं धृतिं बुद्धिं प्रचोदयात्। ओं नमः सभाभ्यः सभापतिभ्यश्च वो नमः। ओं सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओं शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ओं Friends, we are going to be doing the 37th talk in Sanatana Dharma series. The subsidiary series called Ancient Scriptures was to go on for 7 talks, of which this is number 5. And then the further subsidiary series of Upanishads of totaling 5 talks, this one is number 3. Upanishads number 3 of 5. For each of the 4 Vedas, there is one grand pronouncement that is recognized as a Mahavakya. That is what we are going to see today. Earlier we have done a kind of a general survey and a capsule summary without getting into any technical quotations or stanzas or explanations. But now today we are going to see 4 statements called Mahavakyas, most important pronouncements from the Upanishads, one each for each of the Vedas. The Aitharvaya Upanishad, occurring in Rig Veda, has the Mahavakya Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, occurring in Yajurveda, has the Mahavakya Aham Brahma Asmi, Aham Brahma Asmi, I am Brahman. The Samaveda, in its Chandogya Upanishad, it is also one of the big Upanishads, has the Mahavakya Tat Tvam Asi, Tat Tvam Asi, that art thou. The 4th Veda, Atharva Veda, in its Mandukya Upanishad, which is one of the smallest Upanishads, has this Mahavakya, I am Atma Brahma, I am Atma Brahma. This self, I am Atma, is Brahman. Each one of these can generate a prolonged debate on what they mean. We shall take up the meanings given by Adi Shankaracharya. So first we take Tattvamasi, the Samaveda thing. That art thou. Tate, that. Tvam, thou, you. Asi, you are. That Brahman, which is the common reality behind everything to the cosmos, that Brahman is the same as the essential divinity, namely the Atman in you, in me, in us. This is the grand final identity of the Upanishads. It cannot be inferred from any other piece of knowledge or any other logical argument. It is totally different from any objective experience. The realization of this arises only by intuitive experience by the grace of the Guru, at the instance of the Guru. This is what the Acharyas say. So now let us take Tattvamasi in detail. The direct, explicit meaning of the simple words. The words are very simple. Tati Tvam Asi. Tati means that, Tvam means you, Asi means are, A-R-E. So Tati and Tvam are simple enough. But the direct, explicit meaning is not enough to understand the Mahavakya. Tvam means you, of course, but figuratively, it represents any person or individual, me or you or anybody. But that does not say everything about the word. You have to deactivate much of what one thinks you means. You, Y-O-U. You have to deactivate much of what you think, what that word you means. When you see a jar or think of it, jar, you know you are distinct from it. You are thinking of it. You are seeing it. The jar is not you. Okay? So also, when you can see your body or can think of your mind and intellect, you should understand that you are neither your body, nor your mind, nor your intellect. You, that capital U, Y-O-U within quotes, are other than all these. Of course, you feel you have a mind and an intellect, but that feeling itself is the work of your mind. It is a conceptualization by the mind of the mind and intellect. So we think, we have a conception of mind and intellect. We cannot see it, of course, but we can conceive it. This conceptualization itself is analogous to your conceptualization of the jar. When you see the jar, you can conceptualize it. But the mind-intellect conceptualization is of a subtle object, but the conceptualization of the jar is, of course, of a material object. But both conceptualizations are conceptualizations. They validate that the objects of your conceptualization. What is the object? In one case it is the jar, in this case it is the mind and intellect. They are different from you. What you can conceptualize, what you can conceive of in your mind is different from you. Slowly, this is going to be a real tough going for newcomers. Those who know this already will find it probably simple, but it is really profound. This is the most profound truth from the Upanishads. Now, you means the innermost self, the Atman. It is existence, consciousness, bliss. Already we saw that. Atman is changeless and permanent. It is one and only one. Like existence of light, without the existence of anything to be lighted, light can exist. There need not be anything for the light to light it. Light can exist. So also, consciousness exists without the necessity of objects to be conscious of. So you are consciousness. That is what the Upanishads say. That is why you are conscious of objects. You are existence. That is why you exist. Your body, senses, mind, intellect, they don't exist always. But you exist all. You means capital U. Whenever you see, it is way language can be very deceptive. Understand it carefully. When I say you exist always, I am thinking of the real you. So the body, senses, mind, intellect, etc., which don't exist always, they are not you. You are the Atman. Therefore, you are infinite. There is nothing other than you. So you have nothing to want. Therefore, you are bliss. You have nothing to want. This is the Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa, that is what you are. But, sir, I don't know this. Yes, we are all ignorant of the Satchidananda Swarupa that we are. Why are we ignorant? Because of the adjunct or upadhi in the form of our BMI, body, mind, intellect. All the upadhi means adjunct means upadhi. Upadhis are name and form only. They are not permanent. What are these upadhis for us? They are nothing but the aggregate of all of our vasanas. I told you about the vasanas last time. They contribute to the continuance of your ignorance. The ignorance has started long, long ago, beginningless. When you think of yourself, you are allowing your upadhis to mix you up. You are allowing your body, your mind, your intellect, your opinions, whatever you are allowing them to get mixed up with the so-called you. This mixed up you is the direct meaning of Tvam. This is the ordinary meaning of Tvam. That is the individual self. When mixed up with its upadhis, it is actually a false self. It is not the real self. When the upadhi of the BMI, in the form of BMI, as well as the consequent ignorance, it is the upadhi, the vasanas, that bring your ignorance all the way, we don't know from where. When this upadhi is not allowed to mix up with you, then that you is the real you. That is the meaning of Tvam. Tvam means you, but that you means without the upadhis, the real you. This real you is the consciousness, the self, the immanence of the Lord, of the absolute consciousness, that is immanent in you. Therefore, you are conscious. Sometimes this is stated as in the proximity of the absolute in you, you are consciousness. There is an everyday analogy here. What is the analogy? In the proximity of the red flower, the white crystal, there is a white crystal, there is a red flower. Now the crystal looks red. In the proximity of the red flower, the white crystal looks red. So also, in the proximity of the absolute, you are conscious. So the implicit meaning of Tvam in Tattvamasi is the individual self minus all its upadhis, all its names, forms, whatever. So that is the meaning of Tvam. Let us come to Tat now. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. Tat. Direct meaning is of course Tat. That means the omnipresent, omniscient God. But this also has extraneous adjuncts like powers of creation, powers of sustenance, powers of dissolution, powers of obliteration. He has got 5 powers: creation, sustenance, dissolution, obliteration, and grace. All these powers are due to Maya. So Maya is the upadhi. They are extraneous. They are not the essential characteristics of Brahman. Maya is the upadhi or adjunct of the absolute Brahman. So Brahman minus its upadhi of Maya is what is implicitly meant by Tat of Tattvamasi. So the implicit meaning is what we should get. Ourself, the Atman, seems to have an individuality. The Mahavakya says this self is the same as the unqualified Brahman in the infinite cosmos. It looks a little funny. It appears as if we are trying to identify two things. one that is unlimited and unconditional, and one that is limited and conditioned. I would like to give you a simple everyday analogy. Some months ago, some years ago, we see in the mental hospital somebody, after some years, we see a person, a well-dressed gentleman called Mr. Raghu. So somebody says, this well-dressed gentleman, Mr. Raghu, is the same person whom we saw as the ill-kept patient number 13 in that mental hospital. Now, what is same with what? This Raghu is not the same person. He is well dressed. He speaks well. That fellow was mental, ill-kept, ill-clad, uncouth. So the sameness is not between the dressed up Raghu here and the uncouth patient number 13. The sameness is between the patient minus that what made him look like a patient. Understand it carefully. Minus what made him look like a patient. So many things made him look like a patient. His dress, his look, so many things. And that patient minus what made him look like a patient, and present Raghu minus all his present appearance. He has got a tie, he has got a toe, well-dressed gentleman. But you have to take away all that. You have to take away the name also. We did not know the name of that person at that time. So what is same between the two? The essential person behind the name and behind the dress, that is what we are looking at. So whenever such an identity is talked about, here there is an identity that is talked about, the individual self and Brahman. So whenever such an identity is talked about, we have to throw away certain aspects which are clearly distinctive in both. In the case of the patient, uncouth patient, all the look like a patient and all things are extraneous. The essential person inside is different. Similarly, the well-dressed gentleman Raghu, you see, you have to take away the dress and the name and the form and everything. So we have to cling on only to those essentials without which they are not what they are. So when Brahman and Atman are being identified, we have to see what commonality, what essentialness there is in them that is being identified. Tati Tvam Asi, between the Tat and Tvam, between the Brahman and the individual self, what is the essential commonality that is being identified? Brahman is the cause of the universe, but that is a predication of Brahman. It is extraneous to the identity we are talking about. Similarly, the self or Atman appears to be limited because of an apparent individuality which keeps it under the spell of ignorance. This is extraneous to the essentiality of the Atman. So what are we identifying? We are identifying Brahman minus its feature of being the cause of the universe, and Atman minus its limitations of ignorance, come delusion. The cosmic Maya is what makes Brahman the cause of the universe. The individual avidya, there is a Maya there, which makes Brahman the cause of the universe. There is an avidya, ignorance again, which makes the Atman circumscribed and delimited. This is the individual avidya. So what does the Mahavakya say? The Mahavakya Tattvamasi says, Brahman minus its Maya and Atman minus its avidya. They are both the same, one and the same. No difference. This is the beauty of Tattvamasi. For Shvetaketu, his father said this after elaborate explanation. Tattvamasi Shvetaketu in Chandogya Upanishad, one of the most important statements in the whole of the Upanishads. You have to understand this. We are going to see 3 more Mahavakyas now. Tattvamasi, it is a Upadesha Mahavakya. It tells you, it's a kind of advice, learning. You are being told that you are Brahman. So it is called Upadesha Mahavakya. We shall come next to the Mahavakya, Aham Brahma Asmi. Aham Brahma Asmi. Occurring in Yajurveda. Brihadaranyaka. It expresses an identity. Aham means I. Brahma. This I and Brahman. I am Brahman, it says. So there is an identity, again there is an identity between the real I within you, within the individual, Aham. It's not me with all this dress with name, form, whatever. You have to take away the name, form, dress, everything. The essential person within. Not even the mind, not even the intellect, not even the opinions that I hold on. So, the I, real I within the individual, and the supreme transcendental Brahman, the universal self, there is an identity. Atman is the innermost reality within ourselves, certainly, and Brahman is the utmost reality behind the universe, beyond the universe. These two are being identified. In order to make it really dramatic, so that the thing may get into everybody who has all sorts of doubts, let me bring a modern analogy. I am now speaking on YouTube. Tomorrow or day after or some days later, this will come on YouTube. It may come on the TV also. Suppose it does. Then when it comes on the TV, suppose I am sitting, this I with this shirt and name and form, this Krishnamurti is sitting in the sofa and watching. You permit me to do that. Now, there are 2 eyes now. There is an eye talking from within the TV, and there is an eye, quotes, sitting on the sofa. Who is more real? Obvious answer. The one sitting on the sofa is more real. The other one is fictitious. You know that. It may go off anytime. You switch it off, it will go. But that eye in the TV, I hope you are following me. There is an eye talking from the TV, the same eye, and the same is, take it away. That eye is sitting in the sofa, watching. Right? So one really is the false eye. But it gets the status of eye, it is dependent on that real eye sitting in the sofa. Because that was the real eye which was talking a few days ago on the YouTube. Because of that, at present, it is being seen. So it is dependent on that. So this is more, the one sitting in the sofa is more real than the one appearing on the TV. Upanishad says, Arey Baba, the one sitting in the sofa also is not the real one. The Upanishad uses the word mithya. Mithya. Mithya means neither false nor true. Because look at the eye and in the TV. It's not false. You can see that. It's talking. So that's not false. It is only relatively false. relative to the other. Right? Or I will have put it the other way. It is relatively real. Similarly, the Upanishad says the one sitting in the sofa is also only relatively real. That is also mithya, because it owes its existence. What owes its existence? The one sitting is in the sofa. The I owes its existence to the consciousness of the absolute Brahman. So you see that the utmost reality is the universe, the Brahman. The I sitting in the sofa is not real, but the essentialness of the one sitting in the sofa, that is the innermost reality, that is the same thing. So the implicit meaning of aham, that aham is in the Mahavakya, is the one without the upadhis. You see, the individual self has various upadhis: dress, name, form, opinions, all sorts of things. So all that should be taken away. In fact, anything that one can attribute to oneself has to be taken away from the individual self. Brahman is the supreme absolute without the upadhi of Maya. That also the Arjun should take away. That is why Upanishads, when they describe Brahman, they keep on saying neti, neti, not this, not this, not this. Why? Because none of the things which can be specified or attributed, it wouldn't be that. Any such specification or attribution brings Maya into the picture. So the Mahavakya, Upanishad says, there are no two things, I and Brahman. There is only one. The consciousness within which we are is the same as the consciousness we are talking about in respect of absolute Brahman. This realization is supposed to be born out of self-experience, anubhava. Therefore, this Mahavakya, Aham Brahma Asmi, is called Anubhava Mahavakya. Let us go to the third now. What is the third? The Rigveda thing. Prajnanam Brahma. It's a kind of a definition. Consciousness is Brahman. Therefore, it is called Lakshana Mahavakya. There's a context in which that statement comes. The question arises, who is this self whom we desire to worship? Is he the self by which we see and hear? Is he the heart and mind by which we perceive? These are questions about the self. What is the self? The answer comes, no, he is neither the heart nor the mind. They are only adjuncts of the self. The self itself is pure consciousness. He is Brahman, he is God, he is Brahma, he is Indra, he is all gods. Everything is he. He is the reality behind the five elements. All that is born, everything that breathes, all beings, great or small. The reality behind all these is Brahman, pure consciousness. That consciousness is Brahman. The Sanskrit word used here is pregnant with meaning. Prajnanetram, prane, prajnane pratishtitam. These are two epithets. Slowly I am bringing in some Sanskrit quotations and so on. Till now I have not used any Sanskrit at all, right? Because I wanted to talk to so-called beginners. But now we have to get into the real essence of the matter. So prajnanetram, prajnane pratishtitam. Prajna is consciousness. It's the same as Brahman. Netra means eye. is that by which one is gifted by nature with substance. Netra is what gives substance to one. Netra is also that by which one is impelled to one's natural activity. Impelled to one's natural activity. Therefore, that which has consciousness as the giver of its substance, what gives substance to everything? Consciousness. Right? So that which has consciousness as the giver or as its impeller is Prajnanetram. Upanishad says everything that is animate or inanimate, moving or unmoving, they are all Prajnanetram. They are all established in consciousness. Pratishtitam. Prajnane Pratishtitam. Which means they are all supported by Brahman. Brahman is the substratum. Without the existence of Brahman, they don't exist. They are all supported, not only during existence, during creation, during dissolution. They exist only through consciousness. They work through consciousness. They are guided by consciousness. Their foundation support is consciousness. Brahman is consciousness. Consciousness is Brahman. That is what the Lakshana Mahavakya, Prajnanam Brahma, in Aitaropanishad says. We come to the fourth. I am Atma Brahma, Atharva Veda, Mandukya Upanishad. One of the smallest Upanishads, but most profound Upanishad. We will talk about it again in our next talk, but today we will talk about this I am Atma Brahma. The Upanishad identifies this Atma as the fourth, F-O-U-R-T-H, fourth, Turiya. The name comes from the fact that there are three states of consciousness. The waking state, the waking state of outward moving consciousness, the dream state of inward moving consciousness, and the state of deep sleep where the consciousness enjoys total peace. It has no perception of either external or internal objects in the case of deep sleep. So, waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. They are called Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. There is a fourth, Turiya. Turiya means fourth. Turiya is beyond all these three. That's why it's called Turiya. Turiya is Atma. The other states are not Atman. Turiya is Atma. Turiya is Brahman. In the case of Turiya, the subject-object duality is not there. The subject-object, there is a subject which perceives an object, which conceives an object, which is obvious, which is cognizant of the object. This subject-object duality is present in different forms in the three states. In the waking state, the object is material. It's there. It's a matter. In the dream state, the object is a mental state. We see so many things, but they are on the mind. So it's a mental state. In the deep sleep state, the object is unmanifested. But the subject, the supreme reality, the self as consciousness is there. In deep sleep, there is consciousness. We are not aware of any subject or object. That does not mean that it is an unconscious state, because we are aware of not having seen anything. We infer the presence of the unmanifested object after we get out of sleep. All that. In the Turiya, there is no subject, no object. Only the pure consciousness. without any trace of duality. Pure being. That is bliss. That is the experience of Brahman. This is Brahma Bhava, being in Brahman. What does it mean? It means you have to have this Brahma Bhava all the time. That is what the Upanishads are telling you. So what does it mean? It means an equanimous view of every being in the world as every being is the same self as the one that dwells in the seer. I see it, I see something, but that something is myself, Brahman. This balanced view of everything as one, everything as the self, is a blissful experience. This is called Brahma Ananda. I am only talking from book knowledge now. I am not talking from experience. I am not that great sage who has experienced this. But this is what the Upanishad says. It does not come out of studies or scholarship. You can see that. All our studies, all our scholarship does not give this. It is a state, they say, to be enjoyed internally, not by external apparatus. It blossoms, according to them, according to sages like Ramana Maharshi. It blossoms when one is no more alive to any worldly distraction or glamour. Just like the waking up from the dream, you know that when you are awake. Till then you don't know. When you are dreaming, you don't know you are dreaming. But when you wake up, you know that you have been dreaming. It is a divine perception of equanimity. It sprouts forth intuitively. When that experience crystallizes, they say there is no more knowledge, no more ignorance, no perceiver, nothing perceived, no perception. I am quoting Kripananda Variyar here. It is something devoid of the triple Jnata, Jnanam, Jnayam. Jnata is knower, Jnanam is knowledge, Jnayam is the known. This triple is completely vanished. They become one. These are the enlightened persons, Mahatmanaha. They do not see this world. They do not see anything. All they see is the godliness of infinite love and the loveliness of the omnipresent God. In their world, there is no self, no non-self, everywhere only grace and love. They have no limitations of time, none of action, no merit, no demerit, no happiness, no sorrow, no darkness. According to these sages, according to the Upanishads, it is a permanent, unalloyed illumination. It is a state transcending all speech and thought. How to get to that state? Sir, is there a method? Yes, the Upanishad gives you the method. What is the method? The way it says that is all very interesting. Right? Dispassion. What is dispassion? Vairagyam. A distaste for everything material, for everything other than the self. Right? There are two things, Kamayamanaha and Akamayamanaha. I will show you some words here from the yes. There are some half a dozen words here. I'm going to use these words because they are so like each other that you might get confused. So I am showing you on the slide. Now, there is a word called akamayamana down below, that is right in the middle of the slide. Kamayamana and akamayamana. Kamayamana and akamayamana. Kamayamana means one who desires, one who is running after his desires, one who has no dispassion. Akamayamana means one who has dispassion. He has no wants or desire. A shows negative. Kamayamana, akamayamana. Kama is desire. Kamayamana is a verb passing, it's a past participle there, present participle. So the Upanishad says, the man who has no vairagyam or dispassion is a kamayamana. He keeps running after his desires. The man who has no wants or desires is akamayamana. Right? He thinks that is no wants or desires. He has vairagyam. He has dispassion. The kamayamana fellow, desire, one who runs after desires, he thinks that karma, action is everything. He keeps on performing karma. I am quoting the Upanishads now. I am actually quoting Brihadaranyaka. He keeps on performing karmas. Then he reaps their fruits in the other world. When that gets exhausted, when the enjoying the fruits, that time gets exhausted, he is born again here in this world. He revolves in the same rut of karma. On the other hand, the akamayamana, the one who does not want or desire, the Upanishad goes on. It's beautiful. Upanishad gives you four words now. Akamaha, Nishkamaha, Aptakamaha, Atmakamaha. That is, the one who has no wants or desires is this Akama, Nishkama, Aptakama, Atmakama. It says this. Let us look at the meanings of these things. What is Akama? Akama means desireless, one without desires. Nishkama means one who is free from desires. That is, he makes no efforts to throw desires away. They themselves run away from him. He is higher. Akama is at the lowest level. Nishkama is at a higher level. Aptakama is one who has obtained all his desires. One who has attained the objects of his desires. But one may ask, how can somebody who has no desires, Nishkama, why do you talk about he has attained all his desires? Actually, his desire is nothing but the self. He is called Atmakama. Atma is the self. Atmakama means one for whom objects of desire are nothing but the self. So it all depends upon whether you have dispassion or not. Total dispassion. The one who has dispassion becomes Akama, then becomes Nishkama, then becomes Atmakama and Aptakama. Such a person, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4:4-6, it says, Natasya prana utkramanti Brahmaiva san Brahmapyeti. He is Brahman already. So he reaches, he is still immersed in Brahman. When he ceases to live, even while living, he is Brahman. When the body falls, he is still immersed in Brahman. So it is the state of desirelessness, vairagyam, that can lead you to that final state. The Taittiriya Upanishad also talks very much, elaborately about such a person. It uses the word akamahataha, one who is not destroyed. Kama is desire. Hataha means smitten by desire. Kama hataha. Akamahataka means not smitten by desire. So, the Taittiriya Upanishad, also Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, does the same thing. It compares, slowly it goes up from step by step, their bliss, the bliss of the ordinary man, the bliss of the ruler of earth, the bliss of greater people, noble people, the bliss of Indra, the bliss of Prajapati, the bliss of Brahma, the creator, and then the supreme bliss. So it says each is 100-fold. But at each time it says, Shotriyasya cha akamahatasya, Shotriyasya cha akamahatasya cha. That is, it describes the bliss of Indra, bliss of Prajapati, bliss of Brahma, but each of them is equivalent to the bliss of that great scholar who is Akamahata. Akamahata means one who is not destroyed or smitten by desire. So the desirelessness is the prime qualification of reaching that state. So now let us try to wind up. We have seen 4 Mahavakyas, right? Yes, 4 Mahavakyas. But these Mahavakyas are not intended for meditation. Sir, what is this? I thought by meditating on them I can get to that. They describe only the state of the Atman. It is not a methodology. The methodology I just now told you, desirelessness. Throw away all desires. In fact, this is the major difference between a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta means the one who is released, who has got the final state, even while living. Just we saw that. Shotriyasya chaka mahatasya, I told you. So, the Jivan Mukta and the seeker, ordinary seeker of the Atman, say you and me, the seeker, namely you and me, I'll not talk, add you, me. I'm not convinced. The seeker is not convinced. Still, therefore you keep reminding yourself, you have to keep reminding yourself of the Mahavakyas. That is what the Mahavakyas is for. A Jivan Mukta will not do any such practice, Anusandhana. He will not be keeping saying, I am Atma Brahma. He knows that. Ramana Maharishi says that practice, if he does that, if a Jivan Mukta says, I am Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi, it is like a man meditating that I am a man. Why should he meditate? He is a man. So the state of realization is different from the state of meditation. The common folklore, ordinary people, they think that they speak. Even in writing, we do that. The jnani knows the self. What is a jnani? One who knows the self. What is an ajnani? Who does not know the self. Ramana Maharishi says, this, I know the self, I don't know the self. Both are wrong statements. Because the self is not an object of knowledge. From the absolute point of view, there is no ajnani. Then what does it mean to say know thyself? Everybody in that teaching says it is only for teaching purposes. It is not valid as absolute truth. We are not mature enough. Most of us are not mature enough to understand the absolute truth just like that. So in teaching us, the Upanishad uses the language of duality. The teaching starts like that, of course, language of duality. But in due time, the Shishya, the disciple, is gradually taken to the stage of non-duality. There is only one true, Atman, same thing as Brahman. Consciousness is Brahman. I am Atma, Brahma, Aham Brahma Asmi. Tat Tvam asi. So, the self is not to be known. It does not, it neither knows nor is known. It just is. It is. That is the final truth. With that, let us conclude. We will take it up, the fourth lecture on Upanishads, in the next talk. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः परिपालयन्तां न्याय्येन मार्गेण महीं महीषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु. Thank you.